Hey there, I'm Yankel, and today we're talking about St. Louis ribs, and I'm gonna give you the easiest, fastest way to make them at home in your kitchen. But first, a couple things about St. Louis ribs themselves. Now, typically you find them on barbecue menus all over the country, but they're very difficult to find in grocery stores where baby back ribs have front and center. Now, I think St. Louis ribs actually taste a little bit better, and one of the reasons for that is they're cut from the belly, so they're a little bit fattier. And they're a little bit larger, so one other key difference from baby back ribs is they take a little bit longer to cook. Now, they both go with low and slow, so I'm gonna show you a low and slow method for St. Louis ribs that you're gonna do in your oven using basic ingredients you probably have in your fridge and your cabinet. All right, let's get started. So, first of all, I have my oven preheated to 300 degrees. To me, that's low enough, but it's not gonna take all day to cook. Now, for the ribs themselves, we're doing what's basically called a wet rub. So it's dried spices, and in this case, I'm using Spicer's Mill, a pre-blended seasoning. And you can make your own using your own dried spices at home, whatever your favorites are. Garlic powder, paprika, a little bit of salt. So this already has salt mixed in. Now, what makes it a wet rub is I'm gonna actually use mustard to help the rub adhere to the ribs. And we also want to add some moisture because steam is going to help them become super tender. So the first thing we're going to do is just rub our ribs down with mustard liberally. Now, when it comes to the membrane on the back of the ribs, and you'll notice right here, you can see a little bit of membrane on the edge right there. So a lot of different opinions about this. Number one, you can peel the membrane. Number two, you can score it with a knife, just like X's across. And number three is you can do absolutely nothing to it and your ribs are still gonna be amazing. So just a rough score here, like that. That's all you need, kind of break it up a little bit, but if you don't bother doing that, it's still gonna be great. Both sides with the mustard. We want that spice rub to really coat everything. Gonna add lots of flavor. One other element here is the vinegar in the mustard is actually gonna help tenderize the ribs really nicely. So I'm just gonna, before I wash my hands, get some of that spice rub going. For the spice rub, in this case, it has some smoky elements. That's definitely smoked paprika, which are coming from chili peppers that have been smoked. And that's gonna add that smoky element that you really want out of ribs anyway, if you were to smoke them on your grill. So we're gonna get that flavor just through the powdered paprika in the oven. Remember, both sides, liberal on the spice. And then I do it on a tray and basically get the edges coated. The edges are what get really crispy at the end. Those are my favorite parts of ribs, the ends and the edges. So we wanna make sure they are well seasoned. All right. I'm gonna wash my hands and then I'm gonna show you the secret way to make these tender. Now, the key to the ribs steaming evenly, consistently, and quickly in the oven is this envelope we're gonna make. You can use special paper, basically butcher paper that's not wax lined, or you can use aluminum foil. So what I'm gonna do is rip a nice large piece, and I'm using heavy duty aluminum foil because the thin stuff will rip really easily and then steam escapes and we don't get the environment we want for the ribs to cook. So I'm gonna put my ribs right in the middle there. And then basically, we're gonna fold it up from the ends. I roll it over itself just like that. I'm leaving a little bit of an air pocket, closing up one end nice and tight. And then before I close the other end, I'm just gonna make a little lip and I'm gonna pour in about an ounce of cider vinegar. And I'm adding vinegar here because again, I want a little bit more acidity to help break down the connective tissue in the ribs, but you can use your favorite liquid, whether it's beer or juice or even a splash of water or stock. Any of those work really well. So we're just gonna go with a little splash. It's just gonna help add a little bit of steam to this environment here. And then we fold that up. Make sure to crimp the edges nice and tight, and that's gonna go onto a clean pan. Now I'm cooking the ribs bone down. One of the other key differences between St. Louis and baby back is St. Louis ribs lie flat. And what we want is just a little bit raised up underneath. So I'm always gonna put the bone down rather than having the meat just sitting in the liquids, because that's gonna actually make the meat fall apart too quickly. Right in the center there. Fold that top over. Seal one end. Make a lip, one little splash of cider vinegar, seal that up, and you'll notice I'm always sealing it towards the top so that even if it starts to bubble and some of the moisture starts to leave the ribs, it's gonna stay contained in my little pouch. All right, onto our tray. Now we're gonna go into the oven for about 4 hours at 300 degrees. And at that point, we're going to take them out, broil them, and sauce them. I'm gonna show you the sauce in just a second. These are going into the oven. I've got some time, so let's put our sauce together. Now, what I'm looking for in a good rib sauce are some key components here. I like to think of them in threes. So number one, I want some sweetness. Number two, I want a little bit of texture, stickiness, and acidity. And then number three, I want spice. So to do that today, we're gonna go with some maple syrup, some sriracha, and of course, ketchup, the ultimate tomato-based binder. And it's actually gonna give the sauce a little bit of thickness. So I'm gonna start with ketchup. I'm using some really nice organic ketchup. Got to keep it healthy, even though we want to make it taste amazing. Here we go, a little bit of sriracha. That's going to add some spice. And a little maple syrup. That's going to be our sweetness, our stickiness. Give that a quick stir. Smells so good. Maple and sriracha mixed together. Like, you cannot do better than that combination. We're gonna let that chill. We're gonna wait for the ribs to get tender, and then we're gonna brush it on and broil them. So I will see you in about 4 hours. All right, my ribs are out. It's been 4 hours. I'm betting they're super tender, but remember that every oven is different, and it even matters what your elevation is. So at the 2.5 hour mark, you wanna start checking them for tenderness, because I like fall off the bone, but not all the way off the bone, a little bit of bite. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open them up. And we're gonna make sure they're fully cooked. And then we're gonna brush them with sauce, and we're gonna put them on the top shelf of the oven, directly under the broiler, which I've had preheating for about 10 minutes now. And yep, that is perfect. So they're still sticking to the bone, but I could easily just pull that bone right out. I'm gonna leave them in the foil because that'll save Emily some time when she has to scrub this pan down later, because when you put something under the broiler that's got sugar in it, it's gonna burn. All right, we're gonna give them a good brush with our sauce. If you want that beautiful glaze that you get on ribs when you go to a good barbecue joint, you have to brush them a few times during the broiling process. We're gonna go with one time, and we're gonna look for a little bit of a char, some caramelization, some of that sticky candiness that we want on the top. So I'm going into the broiler for about 3.5, 4 minutes. I'm not gonna walk away. I wanna keep an eye on them. They can burn very quickly. Top shelf. Crank your shelf all the way up to the highest setting, as close to the broiler as possible. That way they cook nice and fast. But if you do want to do repeated coats of barbecue sauce, one level down is gonna do really well. 3 minutes, that's all it took. Oh yeah. That barbecue sauce is baked into the surface. Those look incredible. And they smell so good. All right, I'm just gonna put them on the board here. I can use my tongs. The old grill cook trick from the restaurants. Moving racks of ribs. You can see it pulled off the bone a little bit. That's some of the moisture loss that happens, but St. Louis ribs are so beautifully fatty, it doesn't matter at all. And these are gonna be amazing. So I'm just gonna slice a few of them up so we can see what that meat looks like. Oh, beautiful, super tender. You'll still get a little bit of a bite when you bite into them. It's not just gonna melt, which I kind of like. A little bit of texture. Oh, they smell incredible. Whew. So good. All right, that's enough. We're going right onto the platter. One more dousing of barbecue sauce. Look at that, gorgeous. So easy. It takes no time at all as far as prep goes. The key is just wrapping them in that foil or covering them with something, making sure they're totally covered with moisture inside so that they get a chance to steam. And that's it. St. Louis ribs, baby back ribs, easy to make. Don't worry too much about the membrane. Go cook some ribs. I love them. I'm gonna eat these now, even though they're way too hot. So good. All right, spicy, sweet, salty, fatty, roasted, a little bit of crunch, because the caramelization on the top under the broiler gives you that texture. Melts in your mouth, but you still have to bite it. That's award-winning ribs right there. I'm Yankel. This is how we roll here at ButcherBox. Go make some St. Louis ribs.